Orion Nebula. The Orion Nebula, sometimes called the Great Nebula, is the largest and brightest star birthplace that can be seen in the night sky. This vast area of scorching gas is about 24 light-years in diameter. This nebula is the central part of a larger cloud, known as the Orion Molecular Complex, which extends over much of the Orion constellation and is hundreds of light-years in diameter. To the naked eye, the Orion Nebula appears as a hazy green spot. But with long-term lighting, the colors pink, red, and blue can be distinguished in this nebula. Red color occurs when hydrogen in the cloud is excited by the radiation of central stars. Green is the same radiation emitted by oxygen atoms this time, and blue is the light reflected inside the complex. Eagle Nebula. One of the most famous stellar birthplaces is the Eagle Nebula in the constellation of Snake, named after its eagle-like appearance. That is, the appearance created by the glowing gases of the nebula's bright areas against the background's dark areas. The long, finger-shaped structures known as the pillars of creation are dense, compact columns within which stars are forming. The intense radiation of newborn stars has turned the environment around the Eagle Nebula into strange and dazzling shapes. Newborn star systems emerge from the edges of these columns in the form of almost spherical structures. At the center of the nebula, about 7,000 light-years from Earth, is the young M16 star cluster. Pleiades. Perhaps one of the most famous star clusters in the sky is the Pleiades, which is one of the brightest and, at the same time, closest star clusters to Earth. This cluster is often referred to as the Seven Sisters because of the nymphs referred to in Greek mythology. This cluster has been considered in popular literature around the world. The cluster, about 90 light-years in diameter, is 440 light-years from Earth and is thought to be about 100 million years old. The cluster is likely to survive for another 250 million years. After that, the remaining members of the cluster each continue their independent path in different directions. The brightest stars in this series appear to be surrounded by a cloud of dust that reflects the light of its stars towards the Earth and forms a distinct reflecting nebula around this cluster. The fifth brightest star in the Pleiades, called Merope, is surrounded by the Merope Nebula. This is the brightest and densest area of the reflecting nebula in this cluster, and the star is 600 times brighter than the Sun. 47 Tucanae. The second brightest globe in the sky after Omega Centauri is the 47 Tucanae cluster. A giant sphere made up of at least 1 million ancient stars. The core of this star cluster is unusually dense, only about 120 light-years in diameter. As its name suggests, the cluster is located south of the constellation Tucanae, 16,700 light-years from Earth. The study of the dense and densely populated nucleus of 47 Tucanae has revealed unknown processes that can help to understand how star clusters form and develop. In 2006, astronomers could detect the movements of 15,000 stars inside the 47 Tucanae nucleus using the Hubble Space Telescope. The results of this study showed that the reactions between stars in this densely populated area of the cluster caused the stars to move toward the cluster's center. With the help of images taken by the Hubble Space Telescope from the center of the cluster over 7 years, astronomers have determined the orbital path of its stars independently. Based on these findings, it was found that heavier stars in spherical clusters tend to cluster at the center of the cluster, where they may merge. M30. The M30 spherical cluster, though smaller than 47 Tucanae, is just as beautiful and eye-catching. The cluster is composed of several 100,000 stars in a spherical region with a diameter of 90 light-years. M30, along with about 20% of the other globular clusters, is going through a phase known as nuclear collapse, in which all the massive stars accumulate in the center of the cluster. Located in the constellation Capricornus, M30 is the brightest object in the center of the constellation. Observers can see it from both north latitude and south latitude. However, the M30's far distance from us makes it impossible to observe the cluster with the naked eye. This cluster is located 28,000 light-years from Earth. Planetary Nebula. Planetary nebulae, one of the most beautiful and impressive celestial bodies, are the cosmic equivalent of smoke rings. Magnificent, short-lived crusts are formed by gas clouds that form in the last days of a star's life. When the helium reserves of a red giant star, which has a mass almost equal to the Sun, run out, it faces its inevitable fate. During this period, the only source of the star's luminosity is the fusion of hydrogen and helium in the hydrogen-burning shells, and the star becomes more and more unstable, witnessing changes in its dimensions and luminosity. At the star's expansion boundaries, its outer layers can escape its gravity and move away from it in the form of concentric layers. Stellar winds intensify from the star's surface as hotter, deeper layers of the star appear in the vicinity of space. Combined with volatile material from the star, these winds form stunning views of planetary nebulae. The name Planetary Nebula comes from the almost spherical appearance of some of the first examples of these objects that looked like planets. However, modern telescopes have revealed different faces of these objects. Some are like rings or spherical shells, opaque only at their edges. As they escape into space, the outer layers that emerge from the red giant quickly lose their temperature and cool down. However, an increase in the star's surface temperature, which is at the center of the nebula, causes the radiation to increase in the range of ultraviolet rays. These ultraviolet rays turn the planetary nebula into a beautiful and colorful object in the sky. The color of the light emitted by different gases allows astronomers to determine the composition of the elements in the star's outer layers. Helix Nebula. The spectacular Helix Nebula is the closest planetary nebula to Earth and the largest in the sky. The nebula is an expanding, gas-shaped crust about 2.5 light-years in diameter, and this gaseous shell surrounds the exposed core of a star. The nebula's outer layers are expanding at a speed of about 115,000 km per hour, which suggests that the nebula must have formed about 12,000 years before it reached the state we see today. Cat's Eye Nebula. Located in the northern part of the constellation Draco, the Cat's Eye Nebula is one of the most mysterious and beautiful planetary nebulae in which intricate intertwined structures are formed. The Cat's Eye Nebula is still in the process of being formed. Its central regions formed only 1,000 years before they reached their current observational status. Of course, the outer layers are older. Rectangle in the sky. The Red Rectangle Nebula is located 2,300 light-years from Earth in the constellation Monoceros. The nebula is a dim object in visible light and was discovered in 1973 by an infrared telescope that was briefly sent out of the Earth's atmosphere by a rocket. Eskimo Nebula. This nebula, also known as the clown face, takes its name from its resemblance to the human face worn in a fur hat. FIR is the outer shell, which contains comet-like currents, each of which is several light-years long. These structures were probably formed when gases emitted from the central star reached materials that had previously left the star. MZ3. This is one of the most complex structures of known planetary nebulae. The Eye Nebula is a collection of intertwined membranes surrounded by a flat, donut-shaped ring known as the chakram, the clearest part of which is seen in the bright region beyond the outer membrane. Studies of the nebula's spectrum show significant differences between the chemical compositions of its layers, suggesting that they may have originated from two different stars. Crab Nebula. In 1054, Chinese and Arab astronomers observed a new star in the constellation Taurus. This new celestial body, a supernova explosion, was so bright that it could be seen even in daylight for 23 days. Today, the remnants of this supernova from a Crab Nebula. The cloud is made up of stellar debris 6,500 light-years from Earth and is still expanding at a speed of 5.4 million kilometers per hour.